Park. This opened in 2020 and is the first step in a much larger vision for our downtown riverfront. To take a step back for a moment, our mission at Metroparks Toledo is twofold. First, we seek to restore, preserve, and protect our region's most precious natural resources, and then connect people to those natural resources for the betterment and enjoyment of our entire community. Metroparks Toledo now stewards 12,000 acres, 200 miles of trails, and 19 parks across our county. With a Metropark now within 5 miles of every resident in Lucas County, we are on our way to providing more equitable access to clean, safe, and natural spaces in our community. And together, we're now pursuing a vision, a bigger vision, to elevate our entire region and build a more vibrant, sustainable, and equitable future for both our human and our natural ecosystems. And in that pursuit, as many of you know, we are now proud to be the home of the #1 park district in the country, something we can all celebrate. So the Glass City Metro Park that you're in now is really an essential part of that bigger vision. Construction is underway right now for phase 2 of the Glass City Metro Park, and next week you're going to see some pretty exciting installations going in some of our play areas, so stay tuned to the news for that. The Metro Park will extend from where we are down to the Great Lakes Museum and will be the first piece in this broader vision to have the Glass City Riverwalk, which when it's complete will be 300 acres of high-quality green space connected by 5 miles of trail along both sides of the Mamie River. It will be the best riverfront park in the country. So following this session, we invite you to chat with our staff, explore the boards, learn more about this project, and certainly sign up for a hard hat tour of the construction that's underway right now. The Glass City Metro Park and Riverwalk is being made possible by a community of public, private, and philanthropic partners that includes our great supporters, Dana Incorporated. We are so grateful to have Dana as one of our lead philanthropic donors for the Glass City project. Their gift will help support the construction and maintenance of the Glass City Metro Park and Riverwalk, and they've also made an ongoing commitment to public engagement and sustainability through this lecture series and volunteer cleanup days along the Mamie River. I want to take a moment to lead a round of applause for our Dana partnership. And now we get to the good stuff. I could not be more pleased to have the pleasure to introduce tonight's guest speaker. Dr. Mamie Parker was the first Black woman regional director in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. In that role, Dr. Parker oversaw 13 northeastern states and key conservation successes, including pivotal work to remove dams and restore passage for Atlantic salmon. She then went on to serve as Head of Fisheries nationally. After a 30-year agency career, Dr. Parker is far from retired. Her work now focuses on engaging youth in the environment through speaking and coaching. She engages Black and brown communities in the outdoors, mentors women, coaches conservation and government leaders, and serves on national nonprofit boards, including at National Wildlife Federation. She has also been the Wild STEM program lead for the Lynx, encouraging thousands of Black women and youth to build gardens for wildlife throughout the country. In 2019, Dr. Parker was elected as chair for Virginia's Department of Wildlife Resources Board, another first for a Black woman nationwide. Tonight, Dr. Parker will share with us her experiences as a leader in the wildlife and conservation field, and also highlight how bringing together people from all backgrounds can really help us work together towards making our planet a better place. And I will tell you, I had the pleasure of being with her this morning at Sidecut with some of our summer campers. Dr. Parker did a phenomenal job of wrangling the attention of about 75 5 to 10-year-olds over lunchtime. And I was so impressed, I have absolutely no doubt that she will capture our attention tonight. So with that, Dr. Parker.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it. Good evening. Let me try it one more time. I'm an African-American Creole Cajun that happens to be the granddaughter of a minister. And in our culture, when we call, you respond. Let me try it. Good evening. Good evening. Thank Thank you so very much. Again, I appreciate that wonderful introduction. And of course, I've been out there with all those young children this morning, so I'm just full of life and sugar. And so it is great to feel welcome here. I appreciate that. Again, I want to thank all of the folks at Metroparks for making this possible, for inviting me to come and join you here. And I always have this disclaimer because I think it's important to do so. I am a fish and wildlife biologist, and people and talking to people is not something that I studied. It's just something that I like to do. And so I want to make sure you understand that and know that I know a lot more about fish than I do about you all. So tonight, though, I would like to take this opportunity to share with you all, and I was asked to come and talk about my experience as an African-American Black woman in conservation. But in that message, there will be other great messages, too, that will apply to all of us. They will hopefully inspire you to want to do more and be more. And so, again, when I start, I always have to think about where we are now. The elephant in the room, of course, as we all know, is all about what's going on in terms of the pandemic. And while many of us have tried to forget it, we know that it exists. But there are some great things that we've learned from this. And my friend Joanne Jenkins, she's also a very personal friend of mine at AARP. How many of you all are AARP members? You're just as old as I am. She shared this with me, and I think it's really important. We know how important families are. We befriended Zoom. I'm Zoomed out. I don't know about you all, but I am. And we can work from anywhere. Trust matters. These are things that we heard. Hard times will bring opportunities. But what really, really motivated me was the fact that I saw so many of my people, my family, your families enjoy nature during the pandemic and continue to do that along the way. So here, as I have a chance to be at the #1 park system in the country, it's so great to know that you are contributing to that and making a difference. But I tell you what, pretend you're at your favorite concert and it just ended. And for me, it's still James Taylor. I also love Earth, Wind, and Fire. Pretend it's your favorite concert and it just ended. And here, I would like for you to give the leadership of this park and all of the work that the staff, they do to make that possible. So can you join me? You're at a concert. Say thank you to them. Louder, louder, louder. Concert was. This is really important. I have a chance to coach a lot of people and know that Gallup has proven that 65% of the employees in this country that are working do not get the praise and recognition that they deserve. 65%. However, they've also interviewed over 1 million employees, over 600,000 managers, and they've done the 12 questions to find out what really will make a great organization with the most engaged employees. And that's them hearing that they do a good job and they get the praise and recognition they deserve every 2 weeks, every 14 days. And try that at home too, it works. Try it at home. So we know how important nature is and how important it is. That's the positive news. We are in a world of clouds when we think about climate and climate change. Quite frankly, you all are in a better place than some of us that I live in the Washington, D.C. area, and I do a lot of work in the Chesapeake Bay and other areas. Blackwater National Wildlife Refuge is the home of a really great national wildlife refuge that I have the privilege of doing a lot of birding and other things there. It's the #1 spot when it comes to sea level rise. Ground zero is Norfolk, Virginia, where I live, the state in which I live. And so we know that climate change is helping us get warmer, wetter, limited drinking water, and other waters will be limited. Drought will certainly be the disease outbreaks because we have less habitat, less trees. We're going to have more wildlife species that are going to be really coming together, and that's not good for the environment because they get stressed out, and when they get stressed out, they get diseased just like we do. So it's important for us to think about how and what we can do for climate change. I hope you all will go home and think about some of the climate actions that you can take because Dr. Covey, Steve Covey, and now his son, Dr. Steve H. Covey, they tell us that a circle of influence, what is it that you can do to make a difference? And so I hope you'll think about this. In fact, I tell my relatives all of the time, turn that water off when you're brushing your teeth because you would be surprised that for every minute that water is on, a gallon of it is going down the drain. And we really need to care. Water seems to be something that we have lots of, but water, limited amount of water, some of the issues we're facing in the West, they're gradually coming east. So turn that water off. But there are other climate action things that you can do too that will make a difference. And hopefully you'll go home and look those up, but you'll also tell your neighbor about it. Because again, that circle of influence, influencing others to make a difference. Making our best better is what this is all about and what I'm hoping you'll get from what I'm talking about today. Passion, inspiration, and excellence will help us address climate change, in my considered opinion. We have to have that passion to be continuously sticking with it and making a difference. We have to be inspired by our scientists and others that know what the impacts are to really make a difference in this. And then we need that excellence in modern technology, those tools to make it work. Alternative communications in sessions like this, telling people what they can do to help out, their individual choices that they make, whether it's eating beef one day, less a week, or having a meatless Monday, or whatever it is that you want to do. It's your choice. You choose to do that. And the other thing, when we think about climate, we know that folks in the Black and brown communities will suffer the most from climate change. They are in the underlying areas. They're in the floodplains of this country where they're going to get flooding first. They're also in many of the cities where the concrete is and less trees are, so they are going to get warmer. They're going to suffer from air quality issues as well. And so it's important for us to think about that. So again, my conversation today is all about making our best better. And of course, there's no shame in my game. This is something that the Girl Scouts tell us about all of the time. People ask me, where did you come from? I came from right here. This is southern Arkansas, right on the border of Louisiana. My mother had already had 5 boys and 5 girls. She was about to have her 11th child. This morning when I was talking to the students about this, and I passed by one of them after I was done, and you're laughing because she was there, the little girl said, her mama had 11 children. The little boy said, all at once? And of course the young lady corrected him and said, no boy, she's the last one. So that was really good. But 11 children to work this farm. Each one of these children that she had, the more you had, the more you could work the farm. But none of them really enjoyed the outdoors when they didn't have to be outside. And so she said, this last one, I'm so grateful that I don't have to work as hard, that I'm going to have her enjoy the outdoors with me. Now, some months earlier, it wasn't have her do it. President Eisenhower had sent the troops into Little Rock Central High School in 1957, September. My mother decided that this was her president and that she was so happy and impressed with him for the courage that he had. And she said, I'm going to name my baby after the president. I'm so glad Mama didn't name me Ike. But she did name me Mamie, and Mamie was the first lady of the country at the time. However, she said there's a big responsibility that comes with being the first. There's a lot on the shoulders of the women in conservation and natural resources being the first. There's a lot for pioneers that are doing what you all are doing here in Metroparks, where you are taking brownfields and converting them and having your leaders there go to the board and say, this is something we want to do. It takes courage of the giants to do things like that. But pioneers can be very isolated, but they need to have courage. And they need to overcome that fear, which is what my mother taught me on the banks of Bayou Bartholomew. The essence of my being, Miss Cora Parker. On the banks of Bayou Bartholomew, southern Arkansas, is where Bayou Bartholomew, the longest bayou in the world, over 360 species of fish and wildlife here, is where I got my introduction, right on the banks of Bayou Bartholomew in Lake Enterprise. Also now, Overflow Creek National Wildlife Refuge. But my mother didn't just teach me about animals. I remember her telling me one time, you know, I saw my first mallard, and she said to me, I said, this is a beautiful bird. What is it? I wanted to know more about it. And she said, let me give you my bird lesson. Now, you have to understand, I thought she had an 8th grade education until I did Ancestry.com recently. She had a 5th grade education. But she was an awesome botanist. She knew a lot about birds. She knew a lot about wildlife, too, which was amazing to me. My grandmother's grandmother, Ann Rollins, was a slave for 30 years in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but migrated to Arkansas, lived another 30-some years as a free woman, an outdoor woman, too. And so my mother wanted to continue this tradition because she learned a lot about the outdoors from her grandmother and others. And so she wanted to teach me. And she told me about this bird, and she said, leap and grow your wings on the way down. She said, because birds, when they sit on a branch, it's not that they have confidence in the branch. They have confidence in themselves that their wings, that they can actually fly if the branch breaks. And so in her mind, it's important for us to build confidence in ourselves. This was so important to me because the other children in my mother's life, my brothers and sisters, they had their father in their life. My father was on the other side of the track, prominent man in the community, had his family, and when my mother's husband left, she went to him and asked him if she could farm that land, and he said yes. He gave her the land, and she gave him her heart, but he was a married man, so I was born out of wedlock. And so there was times when she worried about me being teased in this little small town, and she was right about that. But she wanted me to really, really understand the importance of the insight and how important it was to build myself up. But she also said there's a lot of work to be done. And I remember having a Coke bottle one day, and I showed it to her, and I could read, and I said, look, Mama, I can read. It says, no deposit, no. Wow, there's a lot of old people in here like me. No deposit, no return. In natural resources, in this world, in conservation, we have to give to get. There's no other way that we can make sure that it happens. We have to do volunteer work. We have to do contributions, whether they're wisdom, wealth, or work. It takes all of those things to make sure that our natural resources here, and my mother said that, you make deposits to get returns. Lots of great lessons. The one that I remember the most, though, was Flip Wilson. I came to the banks of Bayou Bartholomew, and here is when I told her the night before that I had seen Geraldine. And I said to my mom, and I didn't have long hair, but I had a white towel on my head, and I did it like Geraldine, and I said, what you see is what you see is what you get. Visualize success. My mother said to catch that fish, you have to see that fish at the end of the line. You all are visualizing, and the staff visualizing, making a connection, Mike and others, to connect all of this habitat together into a trail where people will be able to do 5 miles around this entire community. That takes visionaries, and you're very fortunate to have people like that in your circle of influence. What you see is what you get. So I went on to high school, 9th grade. My 9th grade teacher taught me how important it was to protect nature. I took it for granted, and a lot of us do take it for granted. And he introduced me to Marvin Gaye's song, Mercy, Mercy Me, The Ecology. If you get a chance, listen to the lyrics to that song or read the lyrics to that song. The song said, mercy, mercy me, things are not like they used to be. What happened to our blue skies? It said radiation in the air. And then it says fish full of mercury. At that time, I was watching Different Strokes on TV. And that's when I put my hands like this and said, what you talking about, Willis? Arnold said that to Willis several times, and I asked that question. My teacher challenged me, and I hope you're challenged to continue to make the best better when it comes to your communities. And I know that if you're here in this room, I'm talking to a lot, preaching to a lot of the choir, but it's important to do that. That song inspired me. I started doing my research. I look back over my high school graduation speech, and in it, we were talking about these things here. Unfortunately, today in 2022, we're still talking about these things today. What really, really touched me and inspired me was the pesticides in the water where I caught my fish, because 75% of the protein in our diet came from the land. And so as you can imagine what that means for many of the people in my family right now that's suffering from all types of diseases, some of which are directly related to bad water, mercury in the fish, in the water that we drink. Now, invasive species weren't as important as they are now in terms of conservation. It's important that we look and understand. A lot of people spend a lot of time on endangered species, and I think that's important because I realize some will go extinct if we don't. But invasive species are a big threat to our natural resources, whether it's zebra mussels or other carp that are in the Mississippi River and other places. And sometimes we have to make sure that our messages are clear and that we inspire others by making that connection. Today, when I talked to the kids about fish, they talked about the fish. When I asked them if fish talk to each other, they were really, really happy to know they did. We talked about how they talk to each other, acoustics and through their teeth or their bladders, swim bladders. They loved hearing about the butterfly. The butterfly would taste its food with its feet. They loved hearing about the wings and all of that. But when we talked about the fish that they ate, that's when I saw them really make that connection as to why it's important for us to take care of natural resources and why this is important. A large percentage of the girls in my 9th grade class were pregnant in the 9th grade. Right now, they are great grandmothers. I was fishing with my mother, and I tell people all of the time, had I not been fishing, I would have been kissing. I would have been kissing myself. But nature will save a lot of people, and will save a lot of these kids. You'll be surprised. Save lots of adults when we think about mental health, when we think about serenity gardens, when we think about them getting into centers where they can practice. I call it the 3 Ps. They can prepare to learn how to be outside, because it takes us knowing what kind of clothes to wear, what kind of shoes to wear so they're comfortable. Being prepared, getting ready mentally to understand what it means to get ticks on you, not being afraid of snakes and other things, being prepared, but also then practicing and then prevailing. All of those things are important, and it's important for us to do that. So nature will save a lot of us when we have a chance to be in the outdoors. So it was time to go to college. I wasn't sure what I was going to study. So at that time, you had to declare your major at the beginning of the school year when you were a freshman. And you had taken these tests by the counselors, but I didn't want to be a teacher. I love my teacher. Don't get me wrong now. I'll tell you a story about him later. I love those teachers. But I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So when I got in line and had to declare my major, it was amazing. The person in front of me was studying political science. The person behind me was studying biology. And so when it came for my time to declare my major, I put biology down. There's a biologist back there that's about to go to Carnegie Mellon to get his PhD in the audience. Give him a round of applause. We're really happy about that. He's going to study microbiology. I studied biology because I had a crush on that 9th grade science teacher. I wanted to impress him. He was going to be my baby daddy one day. So it was why I chose biology. But after being there for a while, the first semester, and again, I saw no role models. I saw no one who looked like me that actually was outside doing what I wanted to do. And so the first semester, I did what Dr. Covey said again. I fished in the morning and took my classes in the afternoon. He said, put first things first. So one day, I found out that there was a recruiter in town, a very competitive internship program at U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And I signed up for the interview and went to the interview. He was like a sleazy used car salesperson, not like yours, I'm sure. He sold me on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, led me to believe the job was in Arkansas. So I got the position, and I was ready to go for my summer job, which also meant that I had to take the next semester off, and so I was going to be gone from May until January. I thought in Arkansas. The job was in Wisconsin. I called him up and I said, I've never been north of Little Rock. Isn't it cold up there? It's like a used car salesperson. He said, let me call you back in about 3 days. He did. He said, it is. We know it's cold up there because he lived in Ashland, Wisconsin. He said, you're going to La Crosse, Wisconsin. He said, we're going to do something special for you. We're going to throw in some free clothes. I got there, there were uniforms, and everybody had those. But one thing that he did do is that he was a mentor and a buddy for me, and still is. Actually, his wife and I are the best of friends, and we've been that way for over 43 years. And so mentors are so important. That's the message there, how important. But it was fear that was about to keep me from going to Wisconsin. I was like, I'm not going there. I don't know anybody there. I don't know what they eat. I don't know how they sleep. All I knew that it was north, and then I figured it out later, it was all white people. And I didn't know how that was going to work out for me either. However, I thought about my mother again when she said, fear, false evidence appearing real, F-E-A-R. Please, please, please think about where fear might paralyze us and how it might paralyze us individually. Most of the problems, I feel like, when it comes to partnerships, when it comes to team building, when it comes to many things, it's all because of fear. And that fear frightened me to the point where I almost didn't go. This is a photo that I threw in because I had a chance to go to Africa and spend a lot of time there in these mountains here. And this woman, I asked her about her passion, and she said, do it scared, do it anyway. And then she said, life can be hard, but life is long. And so as we think about all of our conservation and natural resources that we need to protect, those that people like Mike and others are working on out there, it might take a while, but again, life is long. And so off to Wisconsin I went. Started out in La Crosse, Wisconsin, with all intentions of going back south, no longer to marry that high school science teacher that already had a wife. But I had found Jughead Stanley, a tractor driver, and I couldn't wait to be a tractor driver's wife. I was going home to live. So south, my next job was in New London, Minnesota. But I had all intentions of going south. My next job was in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Sometimes in life, you have to go up to get back down. In Green Bay, I learned a lot, and I learned to study. I actually studied the university there, all about bays and how important they were, all about pollution, again, tying that in to fish diseases as well. Wonderful job opportunity. Reviewing construction projects, highways, bridges, and roads to determine the impact and helping them realign them to protect wildlife species. Green Bay, Wisconsin, but I wanted to go which way? Where? South. My next job was in Madison, Wisconsin, near Lake Mills. Sometimes in life you have big dreams and thoughts, but you take small steps. Madison, Lake Mills, exactly 121 miles south of Green Bay. Just go in the right direction. That's what you want to do. Move in the right direction. My next job was in Columbia, Missouri, where I learned to work with farmers. And this is why it's important that we realize that a lot of this work, we cannot do it by ourselves, that it requires all types of people in various positions. Farmers are really great conservationists themselves because they rely upon the land. They know how important it is, and sometimes they get a bad break themselves. Columbia, Missouri. My next job, because I wanted to go which way? South, was in Atlanta, Georgia. Hated it. Sometimes in life we think we have our goals and we get them. We don't know if they're what we really want. It wasn't that I hated Atlanta. I had a bad relationship with my boss, and I practiced what Dr. Covey talks about, and I'll go over those later, the 4 cancers of life. Left Atlanta, got a call. They wanted me to come into Washington to serve as the chief of staff to a political appointee. And I left the field after working as a biologist every day, getting mud on my feet and in my hands and in my hair and everywhere, to moving into the really muddy, muddy waters in Washington, D.C. with politicians and others. Here as a chief of staff. Then I left that position, and as you heard from Allie, I became the regional director in the Northeast in Amherst, Massachusetts. My boss called me one day and said, I want you to come back to be the head of fisheries in this country. He said I hung up on him. We did get disconnected. So my next job was in Washington, D.C., which is where I live now. Again, I've already talked about how it takes all of us to make our best better. One of the things that I learned here is that to prove to be a problem solver, affirm you will work hard, expect change, and don't take it personal. When we talk about conservation, all of these things are important, especially when we think about urban conservation. Urban conservation, urban wildlife conservation, which is what you all are practicing here in this community, is so important for us to think about, that the individuals that we're reaching out to, the non-traditional partners and some of the urban knights, you know, they're going to want to see that you are hardworking and problem solvers and to expect change. I had a chance to work my last job. Again, I worked for several politicians. This was the last one. My favorite T-shirt says, "She from Wilmot." It's Ebonics, but it keeps me centered. And that's what we have to do when we're working in the political arena. That's my hometown in Arkansas. So it's all about choices, consequences, commitment, and changes. As we think about urban wildlife conservation, lots of changes, lots of commitments, lots of opportunities for sure. So right now I live in Northern Virginia, right over the Potomac River near Dulles Airport. I have been all over these neighborhoods looking for the gentleman that said this quote. This quote is so important to me that I have it up in my house. It says, "No one can change our yesterdays, but all of us can change our tomorrows." I went to farmers markets, I went to grocery stores, I even went to church looking for him. General Colin Powell lives in my neighborhood before he passed away. But this quote is so important when we think about where we are in this country today and how divided it is, and how, you know, a lot of times there's a struggle between rural and urban conservation, and, you know, and all of the history that we're dealing with in this country. General Powell says you can't change our yesterdays, but you can change our tomorrows. And so we like to focus on the future, which is what this is all about. I talked about these four habits, the cancers of life that will eat you up. They almost ate me up. I had problems with my boss, so I criticized, I complained, I compared, and I competed. 4 cancers of life that will eat you up. What I learned is that criticizing did not help, because I was not talking to the person that could actually change when we think about change. And these are some personal lessons here. When I talked about comparing, usually I'm putting myself up or bringing somebody down, and we have to be real careful about that. I want you to think about that real. And then again, complaining. What I learned, 85% of the people that I complain to, guess what? They don't care. That's right, they don't care. Can you believe even my friends and family, 85%? 85%, they don't care. And the other 15%, guess what? They're so happy. Whatever is going on in your life isn't going on in theirs. So you really need to think about that. I'm almost done. I have about 5, 6 more minutes. I need to get a drink. While I do that, I want you to look at your neighbor, and I want you to tell your neighbor one of these that you'd like to work on. One of these you'd like to work on. Seriously, when you leave here, which one of those? I'm going to get a drink here. How you doing?
Just come and get you a drink.
Thank you.
These folks didn't realize they were going to make them do work during the presentation.
I'm surprised they're doing it. Okay, I'm going to do a poll now. All right. All those criticizers, stand up, stand up. Those that are criticizing, own it, own it, own it. Stand up. Look at your fellow critics there. All right. All right, these are all the critics here, right? All the critics. All right, critics, sit down. Let's hear about those that are comparing all of the time. Comparing. There you go. Own it. Own it. Own it. All right, look around. Make sure you see your partners. All right, where are my complainers? Where are you, complainers? Woo! You're there. Own it. Look at your partners. Yes. And then finally, our competitors. I'm talking about negative competition. It's positive. Whoa, stand up. Stand up. There you go. There you go. You see your partners too. All right, this is just a way for you to see what goes on. One of the things I want you to do is practice. You can still do any of these, but take little short periods of time during the day to do it, okay? And then stop doing it. Take 20 minutes, 25 minutes, whatever it takes to stop doing it, to do it. So practice it and then quit. Here's what I want you to do. Practice it, that you won't do it between now and the time this meeting ends. Then I'm going to see if you can make it to the bedtime. Then I'll see if you make it through breakfast tomorrow and then lunch. That's all I'm asking of you. And you got the family-friendly rate here, so that's my only ask. Put it in compartments and try to work on it. Also, some of you, if you're sitting next to someone you know, you have an accountability partner. And that partner should keep you straight. So here's what almost derailed me. This is what almost always will derail a great partnership as well. Whether it's working in our homes, whether it's working within our families, in conservation, these things will hurt. And this book is really great about the speed of trust if you're looking. In Washington, I was also responsible for all of the Alaska, actually marine mammals throughout the United States. So I had a chance to do 7 years of working with polar bear, walruses, and other animals like that. 7 years I had a chance to go to Alaska and do some research with folks on work like this. Very, very fun opportunity. This is just some of the great opportunities that you all in your community and your parks should be looking for to get resources that may be available. I've talked a little bit about diversity. The underestimated future workforce is important. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but I'd love to be invited back, and I hope I will, and that this room will have more cafe au lait, mocha. I'd like to see more diversity here, because what we have found in the Washington, D.C. area, that many of the people that are now becoming responsible for funding that will come down to the states and to the local communities, many of them are people of color. So you want some good representation and people that are in front. So that's the business model is what I'm talking about. And in this room, it's going to take you all to continue to do that. But I know you're working on it, and I know you'll give it your best. Limited resources. As regional director in the Northeast, I had the privilege of being responsible for New York City as one of my areas, from Maine down to New York. 9/11 came. I watched 2,000 of my employees leave the office that day with tears in their eyes. They wanted to hug. They just wanted to be together. What we discovered later was that one of our employees was on flight 93. And as I think about our limited resources that you have and what you've done with them here and what you will do in the future, I think about these individuals, Rich Godatno and the other people on that plane He called his parents, and he said, we're going to take these hijackers down. His parents said that they went throughout that plane. They found any type of resources that they could. Fingernail files. They tore things, seats off of the plane. They found whatever they could. And that's what we have to do when we want to be better. We have to work from within, but we have to use the little resources we have. And then he said they huddled together. And to make our best better, we have to stay together, because together we rise. They got together, and in unison, they said, let's roll. And that's what I hope that we see and continue to see in communities throughout this country, that will use your metro parks as a role model to become parks of the future. And so let's roll. So as I close, I talked a lot about my mother, but I tell you, she died 2 weeks before I graduated. And as you can imagine, having to live without her, and it was very hard. But I remember on her dying bed, asking her, how in the world can I live without you? We talked about who would continue to let me live with them, and how I would, what my holidays would look like when I come home from college and all of that. But then she basically said, Mamie, you got to remember all the things that I taught you on Bayou Bartholomew. And the one thing that I remembered the most, and the thing that carries me through, and it's a message in this that some of you all may know, but it's in this song, Row, Row, Row Your Boat. So as I go, let's sing this song one time together. Are you guys with me? You ready? All right, let's go. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily. All right, let's hear it from the men. I want to hear these Barry White. All right, Barry White, how low can you go? All right, guys, come on, let's do this. Row, row, row your boat gently down. They sound good. They sound good. Women, give them a round of applause. Here's the deal. White men have had it hard here lately, and it's a lot of good white men. All those things that I talked about and all those jobs I had, it was because a white man gave it to me. And they've taken it hard lately. There's a lot of good white men. There are a few ones that need some work. But most of them are good. Just like life, most of life is really pretty good to most of us. And so we got to give these men a round of applause. So women, come on, give these men a round of applause. Yeah, louder. Yeah. Now normally, but it's time for me to sit down, I'll have the women to sing with you, because that harmony in itself tells us a lot about synergy and how important that is. But I won't do that, because I want to tell you the message in this song. Because when my mother put me on my first boat, she talked to me about this. And she said, row, 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 don't stop. Row, 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 don't quit. And then she says, row your boat, right? Look at your neighbor now and say, row your boat. Row your boat. Row your boat. Row your boat. The problem is sometimes we're too busy rowing somebody else's boat. Stay in your lane. Conservation, stay in your lane. Row, row, row your boat. And then it says gently. Gently, that's the word that's important. Sometimes as a woman leader, many of the men wanted me to lead like Rambo. But winning the Presidential Rank Award, getting inducted into the Arkansas Hall of Fame, the Bass Pro Shop, Lifetime Achievement Award, all of those things were because, gentleness is what made work for me. And then it talks about merrily. That's choosing happiness. Kurt Franklin said, I'm not saying you're ugly, but you look so much better when you smile. Smile, merrily, be happy, choose happiness. And then it says life is but a dream. My husband introduced me to Ben Franklin. And as I close, I want you to think about evaluating your work and what you do. Ben Franklin every day asked the question, what good have I done this day? What good have I done this day? It's all about self-evaluation. What have you done for others? He was 50 years old. He came to me and he said, you're married to your job, and I'm going to get a divorce. I fought for what was important. I fought for the love of my life. I begged him to stay. He left anyway for 3 months. There was another woman in the picture, but after some counseling and all of that, we went back, and I learned to be a good wife, and he learned to be a good husband. 2 years later, he came back to me, and he said he was leaving again, and I was like, Gloria Gaynor, go out the door, don't turn around now. You're not welcome anymore, I will survive. But he was dying this time. At the age of 50, he had stomach cancer. And he was dying, but it was on his dying bed that he reminded me of my mother's dying bed. And when I was there with her and she taught us this poem that eventually became a song, it said, each day I live to be a day to give the best of me. I'm only one, but not alone. Your finest day is yet unknown. Make your best better. And I'll leave you with that poem. And I'd like you to say it with me as we close. Each day I live, I live to be a day to give the best of me. I'm only one, but not alone. Our finest day is not yet unknown. So that was 15 years ago, and that was a sad time for me. But I'll tell you, December 27th, I got married again. And it was this man that every night we talk and we think about tomorrow. But I want you all to think about tomorrow, because every day before I go out the door, he tells me to go work your dreams. And so that's what I encourage you to do, is to go work your dreams. Make your best better. And know that it takes a village. I thank you for your time and attention. I apologize if it took me a little longer, but you guys got me all hyped up. So give yourselves a round of applause.
And she looked at me and she slapped my hand and said, bring it in here, and gave me a big hug.
That's right. That's right.
So